First, talk about the election, because I think that's important. I just, we came from a retreat where we had some people come in and talk about what really happened in the election. And it's interesting, because if you really hear the numbers, you know, a lot of people just say, well, you know, the voter fraud, and we could talk about all that. He's elected, we have a new president, or president again, but let's look at what really happened. I think that's just something I want you to take back with you as we think about the next elections in the future. Romney actually got 3 or 4% more Republican votes than McCain got, so that was good. If you look at independents, Romney actually won the independents by 5 or 6 percentage points. Normally in past elections, that whoever wins the independents wins the election. That didn't occur this time. What Barack Obama did was he actually got 4 or 5% more Democrat vote. But then he went out with single issues. If you think about it, and you can start to, if you think back about the election, he went out with single issues and started to pull people more from the moderate base towards him. So if you think about some of those single issues, when he came out and says, I support gay marriage, remember he said that in June, he was able to pull some of those even moderate and conservative people, let's face it, in the gay community over towards him. When he talked about abortion rights, he was able to pull some of those moderate people towards him. So those are the kind of things that I think we have to think about as we continue to move down these elections, because single issue really was able to pull some of the electors toward him. The other thing that I thought was came out of the retreat, which is very important as I look around the room. The largest majority of voters used to be age 45 to 80. That has changed. The single largest majority of voters today is 18 to 44. So if you start looking around the room and you start talking to each other, and you'll see that that's who's really driving the elections. And I think that's another key part that I think we have to start thinking about. The electorate has changed. Where in the past, you know, the conservative movement and the older population were pretty much the voting majority. Now the voting majority is 18 to 44. So those are the kind of things we're going to have to think about as future elections move forward. The other thing, that the base that has grown the largest, and again, this isn't Jim Renacci talking. I want to make sure you all understand this came from a number of pollsters and a number of people that were at the meeting, is the moderate vote. I think that's just something you just got to keep in mind. And when it comes to the Tea Party, I said this to a Tea Party leader who got mad at me, but I'm just giving you facts. Just like the Republican Party today has you know, a lower approval rating than the Democratic Party. I mean, let's face it, today it does. It's because the media pushes that story. The Tea Party has, I think, a 28% approval rating. So you have to think about those things, because the Tea Party had a very large approval rating. So I mean, I'm just giving you facts. When I said that to the Tea Party leader, got mad at me and says, well, it means you're going to do this. I said, no, I'm just trying to give you facts that you can take back and think about as you move forward, as we move forward to next elections. Because that's really what we're going to have to think about as we move not only to this election in November, but future elections coming up. So it's kind of the information that we're going to have to digest and think about. And what I tried to tell some of the Tea Party leaders, which is, you got to start looking around the room and figuring out how you get that 18 to 44-year-old. Because you got a lot of good information. You know, everything that comes here to this meeting is a lot of great information. But if it's not getting to the 18 to 44-year-old, you're losing the majority of the voters. So kind of keep that in mind. So let's talk about what's occurred since the election. You know, we had the fiscal cliff vote, which we all knew was coming. Again, for me, that's not something that, as a businessman for 28 years, I normally didn't wait until the last minute to vote for anything, or do anything. We made decisions in advance, but that's the way Washington was. We pushed a lot of things off, primarily because we thought there'd be a change in the president. And let's face it, I think everybody in this room thought there was going to be a change in the president. So why do a lot of things before November 4th or 6th when you thought the president was going to change, we were going to be able to move forward, we were gonna have to be able to transition things, and that's really the reason we waited until now, November 6th. And I can tell you, a lot of us in Congress, especially the new members, we were concerned about doing that, but we realized there's no use making decisions before November 6th that we're gonna get, where they would be made a lot easier after November 6th, assuming Romney was gonna win. Of course, that didn't happen. So now all of a sudden we had this short window, and we have a president who has come out, and of course he believes he won with the majority vote. I always say he got 50.6%, so we got 6% that put him, 0.6% which put him in the majority. But he forgets that there are a lot of people in U.S. Congress that also got voted in with higher percentages than that. So that's really what we've been working on through December. Now, I voted against the fiscal cliff vote primarily because, look, we're going to have to do things for debt and deficit. We know we have to do things. When it comes to taxes, they were going up. The president had that in his pocket. That's one of the things, I mean, Boehner was stuck with. When you walk into a room and the president says to me, not to me, but whoever, I don't need to talk to you, I already have tax increases. Very difficult to deal with somebody like that. So tax increases are going to go up no matter what. The question is, for those of my colleagues that voted for it, there were some positive things. It made those tax rates permanent, those lower tax rates permanent for 98% of the people. My concern was, it again was not a balanced approach. It was $41 in tax increases for $1 in tax, or $1 in spending cuts. And again, it was a concern for me that we are just not cutting enough in Washington. So that's why I voted no. But you could see, in any vote, you can take a position of yes, we should vote for this, or no, we should vote for it. My opinion was, we've got to get spending in line, and it's one of the reasons I voted no for it. We now had a recent vote just last week, and again, think about it, we have three major votes coming up in the first 3 months of this year. We have the debt ceiling, we have the CR, continuing resolution, which lets the government continue to operate, and then we have sequestration. Now sequestration, here's the interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize. Sequestration, the president doesn't want sequestration to occur. That'll bring our cuts, that'll bring our spending down to the lowest levels in probably, I think, 4, 5, 6 years, some people are talking about. I mean, there are some drastic cuts. The president didn't want that. So how did we go from a sequestration push for 60 days? Because right at the end, right before the fiscal cliff, the president walked into the room and said, let's push sequestration off for 60 days. He thought the Republicans were going to try and push it off. Then he realized we weren't going to do anything with it, because that's his problem. Just like the tax rates going up, he kind of chuckled and said, that's your problem, Republicans. Now all of a sudden, he's got a sequestration issue that he's got to worry about. So ultimately, what we decided to do is, the debt ceiling vote is a no-win vote. And quite frankly, as I've told many of you in the past, the debt ceiling is about expenditures that have occurred because of things in the past that we can't change. And there's people that say, well, if you don't increase the debt, you're not going to default. There would be a default in our bond ratings. There would be issues with our bond ratings. And anybody has a 401k plan, you would be coming to me screaming when your 401k started to fall and your financial retirement plans started to fall. So what we decided to do, and I was one of those in favor of it, let's get the debt ceiling out of the way for 90 days. Let's push it off for 90 days. Let's put the real fight at the CR, and let's put the real fight at the sequestration. And let's now put it in the president's lap. So ultimately, at the same time, let's get something for that. Let's force the Senate to do a budget. Which, let's face it, they haven't done a budget in 3.5 years. So let's force them to do it. And it was interesting, because I know I've spoke to you about this before, what happens in Washington is, in Washington, as soon as the Republicans put something out to vote, you know, they always say it's those crazy right-wing, far right-wing members of Congress that are causing all the problems. It's really not. What happens is we put a vote out like that. You got to remember, there are 200 Democrats now, 233 Republicans. So what happens is all the Democrats huddle together and they say, let's vote no. Let's force the Republicans to look like failures and idiots, and let's vote no. So they start to push. Now, if they do that, then you have 233, and you need 218 to pass anything. So you can only lose 15 votes. So if somebody wants to stand on their sword and say, I'm not going to vote for that, then all of a sudden, the Republican agenda doesn't get passed. And what happens is the media comes out and just blasts us. There those guys go again. They can't govern. They can't do anything. They can't get anything done. So it was interesting that when we did this, we did it in such a way that we said, well, let's get something for it that even the other side can't say no to. And that's, let's make them do something they're required to do by law, which is pass a budget. So we put that out there, and if they don't pass a budget, they don't get paid. No budget, no pay. If you are on the floor, if you were on the floor the day the vote came out, and I just happened to be standing in the middle of all the Democrats, they were all huddling around and saying, don't vote for it, don't vote for it, we can make them look bad. They don't have, because there were some members that just said, I'm not raising a debt ceiling for no reason, I don't care what happens, I'm not raising it. And so all of a sudden the Democrats huddled together and said, let's not vote for this. And I was standing right in the middle, and they didn't even know I was there. And they're pushing each other, let's not vote for it, let's not vote for it. All of a sudden the Republicans ran up 200 votes. And the Democrats said, we got to get in on this. And a couple of those, and they broke ranks. They broke ranks with Nancy Pelosi there, because it was a good vote. Let's face it, you cannot vote no on that vote. How do you vote no on no budget, no pay? So 89 Democrats crossed over and voted with us. And that's how we got that passed this past week. Now, if you think about it, we pushed the debt ceiling off for 90 days. But now the Senate has to put a budget out. For the first time, we're all going to see what the Senate's budget's going to look like. Now, you heard Schumer come out and his smart aleck comment, we'll show them a budget. We're going to raise all kind of taxes. Well, good. Good, Senator Schumer. Schumer, put that out there. Let the American people see what you're going to do. And I think that's going to be the greatest opportunity for us to sit back. Now somebody says, so what are you going to do on the sequestration? We're going to sit and wait and see what the president's going to do with it, because it's in his lap now. Remember, one of the problems in Washington is you've got to deal with the other side. One of the mistakes, I think, that Boehner now has admitted, that he went out and tried to negotiate with the president, but you can't negotiate with somebody who's never negotiated before. Amen. So now, the president's going to have to come to Congress and say, I don't want sequestration. And then we're going to say, well, really, you don't want sequestration? Well, what can be done? And that's how we can bargain. You don't want, you want the CR. See, we don't even have to do anything on the CR, because the CR will be at its lowest level ever in about 10 years if we just sit on it and do nothing. So now we have the situation where the president will have to negotiate with us. It's be the first time that that's occurred, in the last 2.5 years. So that's where that vote went that last week. I thought it was a, when you look at these votes, I mean, I know I get people that say, don't raise the debt ceiling, don't raise the debt ceiling. We have to get to a point. It was kind of interesting. A lot of the new members, the sad thing for the new members is they came in and said, I'm not going to vote for the debt ceiling, and I said, your knees will start buckling when your constituents start calling you and saying, look what just happened to my 401k. Look what just happened to my retirement plan. Because you see, that's always the problem. And it's the one thing that I think a lot of you don't realize that as a congressperson you have to deal with, because for every vote that you take, there's some good things, but there's some horrible things. Now the Farm Bill, I heard the Farm Bill come up, and I think that's an interesting, that was an interesting discussion to at least bring up. Because if you look at the Farm Bill, you got to remember that the Farm Bill includes food stamps, and it includes all of these giveaways. Not just the farm. It'd be easy. If we were able to split the Farm Bill off and just talk about farming, that bill would pass easily. When you start talking about all the entitlement programs that are in with the Farm Bill, it makes it very, very difficult. Now, we passed an amendment to split it. The Democrats said no. So we tried to split it out between food stamps and a lot of the entitlements and the actual Farm Bill. We can't get that split out. Now, I'll bet you, as a farmer, and I know I heard you say that, you would love for us to pass a Farm Bill, but I'll bet you if you really look at all the entitlement programs that are attached to that Farm Bill, not dealing with farming, you would say, don't vote for it. And you see how you have to look at things? I mean, so, you know, we get the farmers saying, why aren't you voting for this Farm Bill? And then we get a lot of people look at entitlement spending. Now, in my opinion, we've got to make sure that we give farmers certainty and predictability. But the other side of it is, we got to make sure that we get these entitlement programs, you know, especially food stamps and all these other things that are wrapped up into the Farm Bill. We got to make sure they are cut and put in you know, that's not saying that we're not worried about those that need, but let's face it, there's a lot of wasted money in the food stamp program and some of the giveaway programs. So that's the reason you see some of these votes. And let's talk a little bit about Boehner, because I know a lot of people get frustrated with Speaker Boehner. Well, think about who's got the toughest job in the country. I wonder in this room how many people would like to have that job. Think it's easy? You think you can get 233 people to do the right thing? You got to get 218. Think about how difficult that is. And what's really interesting, and again, it's something that only a member of Congress can experience in the Republican Party. Sit in a room when you have 233 people all thinking they know what's right. And everyone gets up, because you got to remember that they're not always thinking the exact same way that maybe all of us in the room are thinking. So no matter when you get up in that room, and believe me, you sit there and go, oh no, he's not getting back up again. And it just continues. So what the Speaker has to do is try and figure out a way to get 217 votes. He can't come out here and say, well, I'm going to get what I know all of you in this room wants. He's got to get 217 votes. Otherwise, he looks foolish. Toughest job. So when we had guys that got up and said, and you saw this when we were voting for the Speaker, it's kind of interesting, because if you say, I don't want Speaker Boehner, you know, I had people send me emails, I don't want you to vote for Speaker Boehner. Good. Tell me who you want me to vote for. I don't know. Well, what you don't realize is there's nobody else in the Republican Congress that wants to be Speaker right now. It is the toughest position in the country, folks. It is, you're dealing with a guy in President Obama who doesn't want to deal with you. In fact, he wants to destroy you. You're also dealing with 233 people who, let's face it, 25 of them are going to be, you got to look at it, even within the party or within the Congress, within the Republican Party, you have staunch, strong conservatives, way right, far right, you have far left conservatives. Doesn't mean you're not a conservative, but you might view things a little different. So he's got to deal with that within his party too. So if he loses 15 votes, it makes him look like he's not, you know, that we don't know what we're doing. The party is can't get anything done. 15 votes out of 233. I guarantee you that if we sat here right now and tried to decide something, I don't know how many people we have here, 50? We'd be here a long time. Because when you have to listen to 50 of you, and everybody's going to have your opinions, and as soon as you come up with one opinion, somebody in this room, remember, is going to say, oh, I disagree with that. I think we got to get to the same place, but I disagree with how you want to do it. And then another person gets up and say, well, I'm not sure I like the way you're doing it. We got to get to the same place, but I think we should do it this way. That's just with 50. I always use the Thanksgiving table. You know, how many people really get good agreement on your Thanksgiving table when you get your family together? I mean, think about it. Now let me add 200 strangers to that Thanksgiving table. Let's see where you get. I mean, that's really what the Speaker has to deal with. I mean, the Speaker really, it's funny, because I've gotten to know him pretty well. He was considered one of the 7 most conservative members in the U.S. Congress until he became the Speaker. He voted against the earmarks. He voted against spending. He was one of the gang of 7. If you go back to his history, one of the 7 most conservative members of Congress. And now, there's a lot of people say we got to get rid of it, we got to change the Speaker. But it's funny, because when I go to those guys on the House floor the day that we were voting for a Speaker, and I said, so you're going to vote no? Yeah, we vote no. So who are you voting for? I don't know. Can you imagine coming out of the House that day without a Speaker? You want to think the Republican Party would look like a foolish bunch of people? Come out of that day without a Speaker. Now here's what should have happened. You can disagree with who the Speaker should be, but we must have had 6 or 7 meetings prior to that in a closed room with 233 people. Why wouldn't you come out and complain about the Speaker then? Isn't it the right way to do it? I mean, if you think there should be another Speaker, then stand up and say there should be another Speaker. But do it in a closed room, and let's argue within the family of 233. Let's not go out on the House floor and vote no. Now, again, those are my colleagues. They have the right to do whatever they want. That's just my opinion. But that's what makes us look like we're not sure which direction we're going. And if you noticed, out of the 10 people who voted for somebody else, none of them, I mean, we might have had 2 voted for the same person. I mean, they were all over the board. So again, you wonder where we're going. Now let's think about where we have to go. We right now have, 19 months left, 20 months before the next congressional set of elections, believe it or not. Right? 21 months now, I'll have to be reelected again. What do you think the president wants to do, and what do you think Nancy Pelosi wants to do?
Destroy the Republican
No,
Party.
they want to destroy the Republican Party.